All right, we're back live one final time. One final time here in the draft. The draft has officially ended. The Rams made the final pick in the NFL draft, taking Deshaun Johnson, D lineman out of Toledo. He is this year's Mr. Irrelevant. So, interesting for them. For the Patriots, they, in this case, have drafted at 245. Okay, at 245, they drafted Isaiah Bolden, who is a cornerback from Jackson State. Bolden's a guy who I liked a lot. I actually thought was a really good fit for the Patriots. He just has so much speed. He was actually, interestingly enough, was drafted by the USFL and kind of decided that he wasn't going to go to the USFL. That he was going to play, that he was going to at least try to make it to the NFL. And then went into his pro day and ran a 4.31 40. Just no big deal. And so he ended up getting drafted by the Patriots at 245. Again, anytime you're talking about late 7th round players, that's really kind of those priority free agent guys that you look at and think, oh, yeah, he's a guy that, we like enough that we want to focus on and we want to get him, but he's more of an undrafted free agent. But you spend the draft capital to get him so that no one else will get him, right? I think the biggest surprise, you look at this draft, and I think the biggest surprise, they didn't go after a tight end at all. Now, what does that tell you? Well, what that tells me is that they like the idea of Gesicki and Hunter Henry. And although they're both on expiring contracts, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised to see them both get extended. Certainly one of them you would think is going to have to get extended, because if not, then you're left with no tight ends. That doesn't make any sense. So it seems like at least one of those guys is going to get extended. So, but more on Bolden. Bolden went to Jackson State, which of course was coached by primetime himself, Deion Sanders, who of course now is at Colorado. But just an explosive player. It's hard to find tape from Jackson State, if I'm being completely honest with you, but a phenomenal kick return specialist, really good in the punt return as well, and just brings some of that elite speed. And so you see the last two picks with Amir Speed and Isaiah Bolden, you get big corners. You're talking about a guy that runs 4.3. He's 6'2", 200 pounds, right? I mean, Isaiah Bolden can move, and he's a big kid. And so you wonder, will they try to move him to safety and have him play that deep safety role that Devin McCourty did? And so I just, I think that's crazy. And I think that's crazy. I think it's really good. And Dark Blue Gold just popped up here and said only 12 guys, 12 players. I think it was actually only 11 players drafted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. No, it was 12. So 12 players drafted. 12 players drafted by the Patriots. So you have to think that a lot of these guys are going to be, fringe roster guys. Maybe you're drafting guys for, that would normally be undrafted free agents, but you have 6th-round picks. So it's like, well, what the hell, you might as well draft them. And instead of trading up, maybe there's no one that you really loved, but those guys keep falling in your lap, and so you take them. So, look, it's not. Is it a perfect draft class? I don't think it's a perfect draft class, but when you look at what they needed, and I know people wanted tight end, I get that. I thought they needed a tight end too, but there are still tight ends available that you can go out and sign as an undrafted free agent. Unless you went early in the 2nd round, maybe in the 3rd round, you weren't getting a guy that I think they wanted. I like Zach Kuntz. A lot of people didn't, obviously. He went awfully late. The Patriots, I don't think, were interested in him at all. Brenton Strange is a guy I thought that might work for them. He went a lot earlier than I was expecting. Schoonmaker is a guy that I know they loved, Schoonmaker. But he went in the 2nd round, or maybe the 3rd round. He was gone early, a lot earlier than I expected, a lot earlier than a lot of people expected. So do you really want to to spend that much draft capital on guys that, yeah, while they're like pretty good, tight end is a position that is notoriously hard to make the transition from college to the pros. It's just notoriously hard. And so if you're telling me that I have to spend a 3rd round pick on Luke Schoonmaker, I don't think that's worth it. I just don't. I mean, I like the kid a lot. And Brenton Strange, same thing. It's like I'm gonna spend that high of a draft pick on a guy who almost guaranteed isn't going to have a huge impact his rookie year. And so, I think the upside from Keon White and the upside for Marte Mapu is significantly higher than the upside for either of those tight ends that get drafted, in day 2. And then as you get later on into the draft, sure, there were some guys in the 4th and 5th and 6th round that I wish the Patriots had targeted, but they looked at what their roster was and what happened last year, and they said, we need to protect Mac Jones, and the best way we can protect Mac Jones is to protect the interior of the offensive line. Of course, tackle is important. Of course it is. But Mac is a guy that can step up into the pocket and make plays. He's not going to escape on the outside, right? And same, he's got a little bit of speed, but not too much, okay? We need to shore up the middle of the offensive line. We need to make sure the offensive line up the middle is as strong as we possibly can make it. And they did that. They did that. So, I think overall you have to be pretty happy with where they are. Now, again, we can argue about some of the players. Maybe you don't like some of the players, and that's okay. I have no problem with that if you don't like some of the players. But to say that, oh, well, it was malpractice of the offense, and it was this, and it was that, and it was, look, they needed special teams help. They got a kicker and a punter. They drafted guys. I think Mapu instantly will come in and play special teams, and I think he'll do it well. I think that, you have your 2 corners later on are both guys that I think will be able to play special teams right away, which is huge. And so for me, I just think that makes a lot of sense for them. We upgrade the special teams, and we make our defense better, and we make our offensive line better. And then, oh, by the way, we take a shot on two wide receivers late in the draft. And again, Booty, we've talked about Booty. I just think the upside for Booty is so high that it's worth the risk. It's worth the risk where you took him, right? I mean, you took him at late in the draft in the 6th round. If you're going to take a guy in the 6th round, right, at 187 or whatever it was that he ended up going, right, 187, it's a no-brainer for me, right? And he might never reach that goal, but it's 187, right? And then you take Demario Douglas, who Josh Downs was a guy that a lot of people liked. A lot of people liked Josh Downs, and I did too. Demario Douglas is similar to Josh Downs. Now, again, then we get into this issue, and people, and Felger and Maz would tell you, well, remember back when, Bill Belichick said, why would you trade up for Julio Jones when, you can have Jonathan Baldwin? And he's not wrong, right? Like, you're not wrong about that, right? That is a cautionary tale, right? Like, if you can get an elite player, a guy that has some similar traits may not be an elite player just because you see him there, right? That's not wrong. I mean, like, I agree with that take, right? That, like, be careful about that. But at the same time, what do you want from the Patriots here, right? They needed either a number 1 wide receiver or a number 1 corner, in my opinion, were the 2 biggest needs on the team. Look, we can make the argument about tackle, and who knows what they're going to do at the tackle position, and maybe Riley Reif and Calvin Anderson will be terrible, and it will be, the Patriots screwed this up. Maybe Mike Onwenu moves to the right tackle. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen at the tackle spot, right? And maybe we'll look back at this and say the Patriots always screwed up by not drafting a tackle, early in the draft in 2023. But to me, the 2 biggest needs on the team were a wide receiver 1 and a cornerback 1. Like a top flight, a number 1 wide receiver or number 1 corner, like true talent. And I don't know if Zay Flowers or JSN would have been a number 1 wide receiver. I do know that Christian Gonzalez profiles as a number 1 corner. Now, he's got some work to do. He's not 100% there. But that elite talent and ability does not grow on trees. Okay. And so for me, I'm okay taking him at 17. If you think it should have been Zay Flowers or JSN, I listen, you can feel that way. I got no problem with that. But you can't attack the Patriots for taking a guy that they think is going to be a number one corner, because that changes the way you play defense. And so for me, I love what they did at 17. And then again, at 46, you look at it and say, well, at 46, and this is the argument, right? Here's the argument that you have. So you say at 46, all right? Well, guess who goes 48? At 48 goes Cody Mauch, a tackle / guard that you feel like is pretty good, right? Keon White is the pick at 46. Some people liked it, some people didn't. I personally like it a lot, but, some people didn't like it. Jaden Reed goes number 50 to Green Bay. Wide receiver from Michigan State, who a lot of people liked, right? But then you go, and Brenton Strange, by the way, went 61. Schoonmaker went 58. So that's what I'm talking about, man. I'm sorry. I can't take those guys that high. I just can't do it. I can't do it. I don't think there's enough upside for those guys to truly be number one tight ends in this league. Maybe I'm wrong. But I just think that there's not enough upside from them to see that. Keon White, on the other hand, I feel like has the traits. And look, go online. Taylor Kyles is comparing him to Trey Flowers. Now, will he get there? I don't know. But if that's the type of guy that you're targeting, like, that's a pretty good player for you, right? Who can play the edge and also play inside. I like that quite a bit. And Marbu goes at 76, and 2 picks later, Tucker Kraft goes, right? Tight end from South Dakota State, who I liked a lot. Josh Downs goes the pick after that at 79, right? And so that was where last night is where people started to really panic, right? Wanya Morris goes at 92. Darnell Washington goes at 93. Jordan Battle goes at 95. Ricky Stromberg, who I liked quite a bit, goes at 97. And so now we're sitting there saying, oh my God, like the Patriots haven't addressed offense, like what's going on, blah, 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 right? And I think, again, rightfully so. But, I mean, look what they did today. Again, they addressed the offensive line. And Jake Andrews, it was a little bit of a head scratcher for me. I wasn't sure where they were headed with that. DeJuan Jones, the feeling that I got was they were not interested in DeJuan Jones. They had no interest in DeJuan Jones and didn't want him. Okay? That was the feeling that I got. That's just what I heard. Now, again, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But that's what it sounded like. They weren't interested in DeJuan Jones. Okay? For whatever reason. Blake Freeland goes the pick before them. Did the Patriots want Blake Freeland? Probably not. I don't know. You would think that if they did, they could have jumped him, but maybe not. Because, Philadelphia spends a 3rd round pick next year to go up to 105. Blake Freeland goes 106, and the Patriots draft at 107. So maybe Freeland was the guy they wanted, gets taken 106, is what it is. What are you going to do? So they take Jake Andrews, the center there. And then they trade up to 112. And this is the one where it's like, the Ryland pick is so fascinating for me because people were pissed when the Patriots drafted a kicker in the 4th round, right? Just livid. But here's the thing about the kicker in the 4th round. If he pans out, if he's a good kicker, nobody's ever going to remember where he got drafted. Nobody's ever going to remember that the Patriots packaged 120 and 184 to go up and get. No one's ever going to remember that, right? They're not, because a good kicker is incredibly valuable in this league, right? Look what happened for those few weeks when Gostowski left and before Nick Folk came back second time. It was a disaster. And then Folk came in and was reliable for them, and it was like, oh my God, okay, thank God we're okay. And then Quinn Nordine came, and I was on the Quinn Nordine hype train, and then you didn't know if it was going in or not, right? He could kick it a mile, but you had no idea where it was going. And so the kicker matters. It matters in the NFL. And oh, by the way, Ryland can also actually get the ball into the end zone and force touchbacks, which you lost to the Bills because they returned 2 kickoff returns for touchdown against you in the final game of the season. That doesn't happen if both of those are touchbacks. And Dark Blue Gold points out Stephen Gostowski was a 4th round pick from Memphis. Yep, very true. Okay. And so 118, he says, I didn't realize it was 118, but I knew he was a 4th-round pick for Memphis. Look, sometimes that's what you have to do. Maybe they wanted Jake Moody. They had Moody at the Shrine Bowl. Maybe they wanted Jake Moody, and Moody went 99th. And they weren't comfortable trading back up into the 3rd round to go get him for whatever reason, right? And you can argue about that and say, oh, they're dumb for not doing it. I don't know. Maybe Ryland was the number 1 guy. I have no idea. No information on that. Who knows? But either way, with the consensus number 1 kicker off the board, the consensus number 2 kicker was on the board still. You had to go get him. So you jumped up 8 picks and you got him, and you got rid of one of your 6th. Okay. And then at 117, they go Saidi Sow. And I'm a fan. I'm a fan of this pick. It was right around where it was going to be. That the guard spot, I think, is important. And so, again, you start to look at what goes around him. Braden Daniels, the tackle from Utah, goes right after him. Carter Warren, the tackle from Pittsburgh, goes a few picks later to the Jets, right? And then you're like, oh, my God, they could have had this guy and they could have had that guy. And you go back and forth, right? Charlie Jones and Tyler Scott, 2 wide receivers. You're like, man, how come they didn't take a wide receiver there? Like, that should have been Darius Rush, who was a corner from South Carolina, who I thought would have been a day 2 pick, doesn't go until pick 138. So you're like, they could have had it. At the end of the day, it's like, yeah, but they felt that the interior offensive line depth was incredibly important. So then they're at 135. They trade back with the Raiders from 135 to 144, and they get the 6th-round pick that they traded up to go get the kicker. They get it back. Okay? And they draft a Tony Mafi, and again, another interior offensive lineman from UCLA. And again, we talked about it. Matt and I talked about it, but the idea is, very simple idea, is this. The Patriots wanted depth on the interior of the offensive line. Clearly, they feel good enough with Riley Reif and Anderson. Clearly, they feel good enough with that, right? And they also have Connor McDermott, don't forget, and Andrew Stuber. Okay? So clearly, they felt good enough with their depth at tackle, and maybe Mike Onwenu. Maybe we can throw Mike Onwenu into that tackle conversation. Again, I have no idea, but maybe. But they looked at what they had at guard last year, and they looked at James Ferentz being their top backup last year for most of the year. They looked at Cody Russi being their top backup at center, and they didn't like it. And they said, we got to go out and we got to improve this. We got to be ready for this because injuries happen in the NFL. So we're going to approach this and we're going to attack this early on day 3. And they did. Okay. And they did. So look, and again, Jamie Robinson goes 1 pick later from Florida State. I love Jamie Robinson. I thought he could have been really good for them at safety. He goes 1 pick later. Justin Shorter from Florida, who is a little bit of an not as well known wide receiver from Florida, 6'4", big guy, runs pretty well, solid receiver, catches the ball really well. He goes to the Bills. Then you got Olusegun Oluwatimi from Michigan. Again, another interior offensive lineman. He was the guy I thought they'd target. Obviously, they like the other guys better because they didn't take him. They took 3 other interior offensive lineman guys over him, right? But again, we can go back and forth and argue about, who should have been drafted and where they should have been drafted and everything like that. But then we skip all the way to 187, and this is where they attack the wide receiver. They go after Booty, which I think is great. I think that's a great pick. You're shooting for the moon in that situation, right? Where you're saying, hey, this guy could be a number 1 wide receiver at some point. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. We don't know, right? But you take a shot. And then 192, you get the punter because you had to have a punter, right? And as I said, they become the first team since 2000 to draft a kicker and a punter in the same draft. Okay. And then again, we skip ahead to 210. They take another wide receiver, Damari Douglas. Again, similar to Josh Downs. Not as good. Similar profile to Josh Downs. Which again, like that, if that's the player you're looking for, instead of spending serious draft capital on him, they obviously thought the interior of the offensive line was a bigger need for them than wide receiver. Or they felt that they were wide receivers later on in the draft that fit what they wanted to do. Right? So you take Damari Douglas, and 4 picks later, you take Amir Speed. Right? And again, can we argue about it? Deuce Vaughn. Love Deuce Vaughn. He goes 2 picks later to the Cowboys, which I'm okay with because that video, if you haven't seen that video yet, get on Twitter and search Deuce Vaughn Cowboys. His father works for the Cowboys and is in the draft room when they announce the pick. And just, of course, right, loses it, crying, everything. They're all, giving him high fives and hugging him. And it's an awesome video, like an all-time video. His, and he's like an area scout or something. He's not an area scout, but he's pretty far down the pecking order. Let's put it that way, right? So he's not the person in charge of making the pick, right? And so when they tell him that it's going to be him, he just loses it, and it's so incredible. So I'm okay with Deuce Vaughn going there because of that. But Dante Stills goes to the next pick later. I thought interior defensive lineman was a sneaky need. Now maybe Keon White fits that role, so you don't have to worry about it. But either way, 214 again, Amir Speed. Zach Evans goes right after him, right? Zach Kuntz goes 220 to the Jets. So it's like, Dwayne McBride, who I liked a lot as a running back from UAB. So, again, are there holes that we can poke? Absolutely. Can we say that we're not happy with some of the things they did? 100%. And I'm okay with you saying that. But to say that they have no idea what they're doing, which people have been doing that. They have no idea what they're doing, and they're this and they're that. And it's like, come on. They trust them, please. Okay. And Isaiah Bolden at 245, again, you're going after the talent there, right? And for me, I would have gone more Ojomo. Ronnie Bell goes 253, but you had already drafted wide receivers, right? Ronnie Bell goes 253. Grant DeBose goes 256, who I liked a lot. Alex Forsythe was another interior offensive lineman that goes late in the draft that I really liked. So, but again, that's what I want them to do, right? And and Darpu Gold saying that that same overarching approach from last year, right? Where we're going out and we're getting super hyper athletic players because the league is now hyper athletic players. Okay. And so the Patriots are doing that. They did it on offense. They did it on defense. They're doing it on special teams. That's what you have to do. Go out and get those guys, and hopefully you can compete in this league. Okay. So anyways, that's just a super quick kind of instant reaction to the draft and what they did. I wanted to go through quickly on those. I'm going to have a draft grades article out tomorrow on Pat's Pulpit if you want to read that. And then we have, for I think like the 4th year in a row, one of my favorite guests of the year for like the 4th year in a row, we have Thor Nystrom coming on the podcast Wednesday night. So love it. Loved it. So it's been fun. That's a lot of fun. I always love having him on. So he'll be on Wednesday night. So if you're there, come through and hang out with us as well. Dad's out. Appreciate you. Says always classy. Craig covers analysis. I appreciate it. Hello, Jeffrey Jamestown Baseball. Dark Blue Gold racked up way more I was talking than I expected. Yes, that's definitely true. But anyone that knows me knows that I have no problem talking for as long as the Patriots allow me. So it kind of was a blessing in disguise. The Patriots made so many picks because I was over here able to talk to you more than I expected. So, anyways, that's what I got. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in again to a draft weekend. It's my favorite. It's truly my favorite weekend of the year. I absolutely love this. I live for this. It's been great. And I think it went better than last year and went better than the year before. I think that next year will be even better. So thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you guys on Wednesday night. Take care.